adding some quick and easy nutrition to our prepper pantry. Hey guys, it's Jara with Wicked Prepared. Welcome to the channel, everyone. If you've been with us a while, you know we love our meals in a jar. These magical jars have a shelf life of 5 or more years when they're sealed properly, and they contain everything you need to make a complete meal. All you have to do is add water. They're perfect for emergencies. You can fill your shelves with these meals and know that you'll be set with everything that you need to eat for days or weeks at a time. But they're also good for those everyday emergencies when you're just too busy to pull together a whole meal and you just need something fast and easy. What I'm going to be putting together today is a little bit different. I'm going to be doing some smoothie mixes in a jar. These smoothies are great for breakfast, they're great for snacks, for after school snacks, they're great to go along with the meal, anytime really, and they are packed full of amazing nutrition. Most of you probably know that freeze drying is the absolute best way to preserve the nutrients in your food. These freeze-dried fruits that I'm going to use in these smoothies have even more nutrients than what you'll buy fresh at the grocery store, because by the time you get it at the grocery store, it's been picked for quite a long time. It was picked before it was ripe so that it could travel a long distance from wherever it was harvested to your grocery store. And by that time, it's already lost the majority of its nutrients and it's getting ready to go bad pretty quickly. Another thing that's totally cool is that right now, Thrive Life has a lot of these fruits on sale at 50% off. And that's kind of why I put together these smoothies, because I'm going to be restocking on a lot of these fruits. The strawberries, the mangoes, the cinnamon apples, and the cranberries are all on 50% off. It's actually a really amazing price. I honestly, a lot of those things, I don't think that I could freeze dry them myself for that price. So we'll have a link right down in the description and in the pinned comment if you want to go check that out and see what's on sale. The 50% off sale is a special for New Year's, and it's going to go on until the 23rd or until things sell out, which at 50% off, they do tend to sell out. So make sure you get on over there and check things out while you still have the chance. I've designed these smoothie recipes to make use of some of our most favorite fruits. So let's get started and I'll show you what I'm going to make today. So the first smoothie that we're going to make, I call a sunrise smoothie because it's got all kinds of beautiful reds and oranges in it. So all we're going to need to put together these smoothie jars are some pint-sized mason jars. I'm just using the regular mouth mason jars. They're going to work just fine for this. I'm going to use a canning funnel just so I can get everything in the jar more easily. And just a few measuring utensils. That's all we need. And of course our ingredients. I'm going to be starting with some strawberries, some freeze-dried strawberries. This is a pretty simple recipe. I'm just going to use a half a cup of the strawberries. I'm going to use a half a cup of the mango, the freeze-dried mango. And then I'm going to add a half a cup of freeze-dried vanilla yogurt. Now I'm going to do a second version of the same recipe because the brand of yogurt that I use, I noticed that it's sold out right now. Now I know there's a lot of you that probably already have this because it's a pretty popular item. And there's probably some other sources for this. I know that sometimes in the baby section they sell some freeze-dried yogurt drops, so you could probably find something that would work, but I'm going to give a version of the same recipe that doesn't use the yogurt for anyone who can't find it. And of course, if you have a home freeze dryer, you could also use yogurt that you freeze dried yourself. Next, I'm going to use some instant milk. And I'm going to be using 1/8 of a cup of that, which is the same as 2 tablespoons. I happen to have a measuring cup set that came with 1/8 of a cup, so I use that. But if you don't, you just measure out 2 tablespoons. And this is our favorite brand of instant milk, but if you have one that you like better, you can use that as well. And then the final ingredient I'm going to use here is some chia seed. We love chia seed in our smoothies. Chia seeds are so nutritious. They have literally so much good stuff in them. And I like to use them in smoothies because they kind of thicken as they sit. So your smoothie, instead of melting and getting thinner if you've used ice in it, then it actually gets thicker as it sits, which we like. So that's a half a tablespoon of chia seed, and once again, I happen to have some measuring sets that came with half tablespoons. If you don't, that's just going to be a teaspoon and a half. So that is all we need, and that smoothie jar is complete and ready to go. It's all full of good things. Everything in here has such good nutrition. The strawberries, the mangoes, the yogurt. When you have freeze-dried yogurt, it actually maintains its live and active cultures. So this is a really nutritious smoothie right here. And I am going to show you how to mix this up and what it looks like when it's done. But first I'm going to show you that other version that I told you about. So this next version of the smoothie is going to be really similar. It's just basically going to change the ingredients around a little bit and leave out the yogurt. So we're going to start with the strawberries. And this time we're going to do 3/4 of a cup of strawberries. So that's a half. And there's another 1/4. When I'm making smoothies, I try to scoop up the smallest bits of the fruit so that I can leave the bigger pieces for the kids for snacking. So we're going to do the same with the mango, and we're going to do 3/4 of a cup of the mango. There's a half a cup and a 1/4 cup. Now, since we're not using the yogurt, I'm going to use a little bit more of the milk. So I'm going to go ahead and put a 1/4 cup of the milk in. Now you want to make sure when you do your smoothies that you're using a milk that you enjoy drinking also, a milk powder, because if you're using something that doesn't taste good, it's going to leave that bad taste in your smoothie. If you're a non-dairy person, you could use something different like a coconut milk powder, and then it would be non-dairy. Now because I'm not using the yogurt, I am going to go ahead and add a half a tablespoon of honey crystals into this smoothie, because the yogurt does have some sugar added, so it adds a little extra sweetness to the smoothie that we like. So without the yogurt, we like this with a half a tablespoon of honey crystals. And if you don't have honey crystals, you could use any type of sweetener that you like and that you prefer, as long as it's dry and granulated. And then of course we're going to go ahead and add the half a tablespoon of chia seeds. We like those in all of our smoothies, and they're so nutritious, there's no good reason not to add them. So here is another beautiful jar of sunrise smoothie all ready to go. Now one thing that I love about these little pint jar smoothies is these make just enough for 1 or 2 people. Now if you wanted to have more, you could definitely use a quart jar and you could double these, and then you'd use your big blender to mix them up. But when I make these, I usually use my Ninja blender. It's the perfect size to blend up these little single serving smoothies. Now we do prepare these meals in a jar as a way of preparing for emergencies. We also do use them for everyday use, and that helps keep them rotated. But in the interest of keeping this prepping friendly, I'm going to use our portable power station to mix up the smoothie. But if you don't have something like a portable power station or a generator or something like that, you can use a hand-powered blending tool like this. And I think that this would work well to blend up a smoothie. None of these ingredients are very tough. These freeze-dried foods powder up very easily. They blend up very easily. They're not like frozen fruits that you might use in a conventional smoothie. My stepmother has a Pampered Chef brand of these. She uses it to blend up her salsa because she likes her salsa smooth with no chunks, and it works really well. I'm definitely planning on getting one of these to have around, because I think it's a really great grid down tool to have for your kitchen. Now this power station is actually a solar generator. We do have solar panels that we can recharge it over and over and over again. But in a longer term emergency, you probably would want to use a hand powered tool and save your generators for more important things. So the great thing about mason jars is that they do have graduated markings on the side, so you can use them to measure the water for your dish. So I've got a cup of water here, and I'm going to go ahead and put that into my Ninja first. That just helps to keep things from sticking to the top side of it. I'm going to go ahead and do the smoothie with the yogurt in it. Now this is a cup of water. That's going to be plenty thick for me. If you mix your smoothie up and you decide that you'd like it a little bit thinner, you can always add more water. So the other great thing about mason jars is that you can also drink out of them. Cheers! Now like I said, if you like your smoothie a little bit less thick, you just add more water. That is really good. It's pretty thick. You could almost do a smoothie bowl out of this. So you could add more water if you wanted, but we like them thick. And like I said, that chia seed will sort of thicken it over time as well. So the next smoothie we're going to make, I call a Cranapple crisp smoothie. It's all full of cinnamon apples and oats and all kinds of wonderful hearty goodness. The main ingredient in this smoothie is going to be cinnamon apple slices, freeze-dried cinnamon apples. And we're going to go ahead and use our funnel again. And we're going to start with 1.5 cups of cinnamon apple slices. There's a cup and an additional 1/2 cup. And next I'm going to put in 1/8 cup of freeze-dried cranberries. Now remember, 1/8 cup is the same as 2 tablespoons. And it's important to use freeze-dried rather than dehydrated like craisins, because dehydrated fruits have a lot more moisture left in them than freeze-dried do. Freeze-dried has basically 0 moisture, and it'll last a lot longer on the shelf. So we've got 1/8 cup of cranberries. Next I'm going to put in 1/4 cup of the instant milk. And then the next ingredient is going to be something a little different. I'm going to be using some quick oats. And because the smoothie has oats in it, that kind of gives it a little bit of that bakery flavor. And it's also going to stick with you a lot longer during your day. This is going to make you feel full for a good long time. It's going to make this smoothie very thick and hearty and just very filling. And that's all going to come from just 1/8 cup of the oats. Now for a little extra sweetness, I'm going to put in some granulated brown sugar. Now just like with the honey crystals, it's important to use the granulated brown sugar. You can kind of see that this sugar is loose and flowy. It doesn't have that moisture that regular brown sugar has. So this is what I use whenever I need brown sugar in one of my meals in a jar. I'm just going to put in 1/2 tablespoon. You could do less if you try to avoid sugar, or you could use any kind of sweetener you liked as long as it's granulated and free-flowing and not moist. You could use the same honey crystals that we used in the other smoothie if you have some of those and you don't want to have to buy the granulated brown sugar. But I already have this on hand because, like I said, I use that in quite a few of my meals in a jar. Next, we're going to add some seasonings. I'm going to be putting in cinnamon and nutmeg. I'm going to go ahead and use 1/2 teaspoon of the cinnamon. I like cinnamon a lot, and cinnamon has a lot of health benefits as well. If you don't like cinnamon quite as much, you can go with 1/4 teaspoon, but I'm going to use 1/2 teaspoon, which is going to be 2 clicks of this little dial, because each click is 1/4 teaspoon. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some nutmeg. Now I'm going to use one of these special measuring spoons. These are so cute. I absolutely love these. These measure out, if you can see, they measure out a tad, a dash, a pinch, a drop, and a smidgen, which I think is absolutely adorable because apparently there are actual measurements for those terms. So I'm going to use a smidgen of nutmeg, which is 1/32 of a teaspoon. So I've got my nutmeg here. I'm not going to use the dial because the smallest I can get with that is 1/4 teaspoon. So I'm just going to measure out that much nutmeg. And then the final ingredient is going to be that 1/2 tablespoon of chia seeds that we like to put in all of our smoothies. Once again, that is going to add so much amazing nutrition. So here is a jar of Cranapple crisp smoothie all ready to go on the shelf. But once again, I am going to show you how this comes together. Okay, so now I'm going to mix up the Cranapple crisp smoothie in a jar. This time I'm using a little bit more than 1 cup of water. It's about 1.25 cups probably. Because like I said, this ends up being a pretty thick and hearty smoothie with between the oats and the chia seeds. It smells so cinnamony. Okay. Once again, I'm going to serve it in a mason jar. Cheers. This is delicious. Like I said, this one is really, really hearty and really filling. And you can totally adjust the sweetness and the sweetener that you use. You can adjust the thickness by changing the amount of water that you use. They're very versatile. It's almost like dessert. Now, another type of super nutritious breakfast that we can put together and have in a jar is a chia seed pudding. Now, this is something that a few years ago when I went on this big health kick, I was eating a lot of chia seed pudding. And I haven't really had it in a couple of years, but I just saw some recipes online that kind of got me interested in the chia seed pudding kick again. So we're going to use, for this recipe, we're going to use, this is a 1/2 pint mason jar, and it's the wide mouth 1/2 pint, so it's sort of wide and shallow, so it's going to be the perfect little dish to eat a single serving out of. So we're going to use the same tools to put together this breakfast in a jar. We're going to use the canning jar, my canning funnel, and just some measuring utensils. Easy peasy. The first ingredient I'm going to add is going to be some coconut milk powder. And I'm going to add 1/3 cup of the coconut milk powder. Now I bought this to use in like curry meals in a jar and things like that, but I thought it would be a really good ingredient for this chia seed pudding. So that's 1/3 cup of the coconut milk powder. And next I'm going to add my chia seeds. I'm going to go ahead and do 1/8 cup of chia seeds, which is just a couple of tablespoons. For sweetener, I'm going to use my honey crystals. I'm just going to go ahead and add a tablespoon of the honey crystals. And then the final thing that I'm going to add to this is going to be some blackberries. Some freeze-dried blackberries to give it a little bit of extra flavor and color and a little bit of extra nutrition with some fruit. I'm just going to go ahead and use 1/8 cup of the blackberries as well. All right, so here's our jar. Now we could seal this up and put it right on the shelf like this, and it's all ready to go whenever we need it. If you want these to last longer, you're going to want to add an oxygen absorber in them. Some people will use their vacuum sealer. I'm not fully convinced that that is going to preserve it as long as the oxygen absorber, but I'm going to make this one up for you right now so we can see how it looks when it's finished, so I'm not going to worry about preserving it at all. Now this jar looks pretty full. There's not a whole lot of extra space in it. But as we add the water, what's going to happen is it's really going to get absorbed into the coconut milk, the chia seed, and everything else. And we're going to be able to get the perfect amount of water in here. It's going to be a little bit, you know, you're going to have to be careful stirring it to make sure that you don't spill it all over the place. But this is going to be actually just the perfect size. Now to prepare the chia pudding, all we're going to do is add the water that we need and mix it. Let it set about 15 minutes and give it another mix just to make sure that nothing clumps together. And then we're going to put a lid on it and we're just going to let it set 2 to 3 hours or overnight. I usually would do mine overnight, but 2 to 3 hours is going to be sufficient as long as it thickens up. Now I don't actually have a measurement of water. I'm just going to add until it's pretty much fills the jar. And we're going to mix it. It's best to use a whisk to really get those seeds mixed in, but at the same time, sometimes you need a little help getting things out of the corners of the jar. So I have a spoon as well. Start add some water and just start whisking. You can really see how those blackberries are starting to break apart and really put color all throughout the recipe. Now this is cold water that I'm using. This doesn't need to be cooked at all, which also makes it really great for preparedness and emergencies. Doesn't need to be cooked. It's just going to thicken up through the action of the chia seeds mostly, and then a little bit with the coconut milk is actually going to thicken a little bit as well. Like I said, I am going to use this spoon to get into the edges of the jar. Bring up all those bits of coconut milk so they can get mixed in. A little more whisking. A little more water. Now if you did not have a whisk available, I think that just a spoon would probably be fine for mixing this, but since I am at home with, you know, all of my kitchen implements available, I am going to use a whisk. We do have an emergency cooking kit that we have put together. It's in our basement in case we needed to shelter in place in our basement. If we needed to leave to evacuate and we had time and space, we could grab that box as well. But if you were in a situation where you did not have a whisk, I do believe just a spoon to stir it would probably work just fine. I'm going to go ahead and stick the lid on this, and then I'm going to come back in 15 minutes and stir it again, just to make sure that none of the chia seeds or anything clump together, and then we're going to let it set for the full 2 to 3 hours. So now that this has had 15 minutes to set, I'm just going to whisk it one more time, and that's just to kind of make sure that the chia seeds don't clump as badly. And then I'm going to go ahead and put a lid right on this and just put it in the fridge, and it just has to be 2 to 3 hours. I'm going to leave it overnight. and we'll see how it is in the morning. Now, because this is just going in the fridge for a night, we don't have to use an actual mason jar lid, an airtight lid. I'm just going to use one of these plastic storage lids that I have. If this was still dry, the dry ingredients we had mixed up and we were putting it away on the shelf, we would want to use an actual mason jar lid. And then if we were going to be storing it longer than, say, a year or so, we would want to use an oxygen absorber or at least vacuum seal it. But I am going to go ahead and stick this in the fridge, and it's going to thicken up the rest of the way and we can enjoy it in the morning. Okay, so now that this has sat long enough and it's thickened up, let's give it a try. You can see how nice and thick this is. You can adjust the thickness by adding more or less chia seeds. If you were to open this up and find it wasn't thick enough, you could add some more chia seeds and let it sit a little longer. And likewise, you can always add more liquid if it's too thick for you. But as you get more used to chia pudding and making them and eating them, you'll get used to how much chia seed you need to put in to make it the consistency that you like. I cannot wait to give this a try. Okay, here we go. That is really good. I think this is my favorite. This is so creamy. I am really impressed with this coconut milk powder. I got this from a company called Firehouse Flavors, and I know I've sung their praises before. I've turned some of you on to them. They're an amazing company, but I wasn't sure what to think with the coconut milk powder. This is exactly what I was looking for. So I'll definitely put a link to this coconut milk powder down in the description, because I know there's other brands. They sell other brands on Amazon. I actually have one other brand that I bought to try, but I haven't tried it yet, so I don't know how other brands are going to stack up, but this is amazing. And the wonderful thing about this is that this doesn't even need a blender. You don't need any kind of power source. Just mix it up and let it sit. And this is really so good for you. And if you think about it, I used honey crystals, so this is not vegan because honey comes from an animal. I'm not vegan, so I'm not worried about it, but if you're vegan or you're making this for someone vegan, just use a different sweetener. As long as it's crystallized and dry, you could use any kind of sweetener you want. You could use coconut sugar. I used to use coconut sugar in my chia pudding a lot. Any kind of dry granulated sweetener would work just fine for this. And I also thought of something else with the smoothies in a jar. How wonderful would that be to send off with like your college student when they're going off to college? You could send a bunch of smoothie jars and one of those little ninja blenders, and they'd be able to make themselves up something super healthy right in their dorm room anytime they wanted. I think that's a fantastic idea. This is so good. I have not had chia pudding in a long time, but I think I'm going to have to go back to eating this a little more regularly, especially with all the health benefits. Alright guys, there's a few different ideas for putting together some meals in a jar that are super nutritious and a little bit different. Something that's a single serving size that you can have for breakfast, have for a snack, have whenever you want. My kids love these. These are really awesome to have on hand. It's really easy for a kid to just dump one of those jars in the blender, a little bit of water, and go to town. Another thing that's really super awesome about these is that they're very versatile. You can totally change up the fruits that you use, the ingredients and the seasonings. You can even add some vegetables. Sometimes some spinach or some cucumbers or something is really great in these smoothies. You really don't taste it, and it adds another good boost of nutrition. So let me know down in the comments, are you a smoothie person? Do you like smoothies? Do you drink smoothies? Do your kids like smoothies? We love smoothies in our house. Thank you for watching today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you made it all the way to the end of the video, leave me your favorite fruit emoji down in the comments. I'm Jara with Wicked Prepared. Survive today, thrive tomorrow. We'll see you next time.